On today's episode of Locked On Aggies, we're going to talk about 8 goals for the Aggies this offseason. And the number one for me is improving the secondary.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on into Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. On the show today, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking a little bit about the Texas A&M game coming up on Saturday. We're going to preview it. We beat them to start SEC play. How do we do it again this time on their home court? We'll talk about that in segment 3. But in segments 1 and 2 today, we're going to talk about 8 goals for Texas A&M this offseason that will make this team better heading into next year. And as y'all heard me open the show, the number one goal for this team is improving the secondary. It's funny. I mean, obviously, when you watched the team play last year, you knew the secondary was not great. But then you see the metrics postseason. I finally, I think 2 or 3 days ago, was looking at full postseason analytics and metrics. I mean, our pass defense was atrocious. And it's funny because, nothing about it's funny, but I mean, 2 years ago, secondary was the problem. And I don't know why it's funny. It's almost like I'd have to go rewatch the games, because it didn't feel like the secondary was as bad last year as it was 2 years ago, but I mean, it was. And I guess that's a little frustrating knowing that, I mean, you could tell by the way Coach Elko used the portal the minute he walked on campus that it was very clear to him that secondary was an issue on this team. And he brings in a ton of guys in the portal. I mean, Will Lee was really good. We like what we got from him, like what we got from Ratcliffe in the safety room. But, I mean, Des Ricks really struggled. There were some, you hit some and you miss some with the players you brought in the secondary. Now you brought in 2 players, in Humphrey from Georgia and Shaw from Washington. And I think these 2 players are going to help you out. Obviously, Humphrey got benched last year at Georgia. I mean, I think he's a player that's going to come in and play a lot of snaps for us. But at the same time, I think that he's going to hopefully elevate his game to the next level. So, that is going to be a big part of the secondary. But, I mean, I think on top of that, Will Lee is capable of taking a step to the next direction. And then Shaw, I expect Shaw to start at your nickel and as your slot corner. I think that he is another guy. I mean, he was good last year at Washington. I think it's a great pickup. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it's really frustrating, especially these last 2 seasons, that you've had dominant fronts, absolutely elite fronts. And then your secondary just can't get the job done. It's a little bit frustrating because, I mean, if you give last year's team or 2 years ago's team an improved secondary, I mean, you add in some great players and you give them a good secondary, those defenses, you can't even score on them. I mean, that's just the reality. So I think improving the secondary should be the number one offseason goal for this team because, I mean, we feel pretty good about your offense. We're obviously talking a lot about offense here in a minute, but I mean, your secondary taking that next step is going to be very important. And I don't think that Texas A&M is quite yet done in the transfer portal when it comes to these players. I think that they're going to go get more guys. I think that it might not be in this window. It could be in the next window, and that's the best part about having multiple windows is you can kind of go through the next few months and then, okay, hey, you know what? We need more in the portal in the secondary, and go get them. So secondary improving is the number one goal for this team off season. Number one goal for the offense, and you could make the argument is the number one goal overall. It's right up there with improving the secondary, is the development of Marcel Reed. That's something we've talked about a lot here on Locked On Aggies over the last few weeks. I mean, you really need, we talk about Marcel Reed's a great runner, and when you watch him play, he makes some good plays with his arm at times. But he's got to get more consistent And offensively, that is the number one goal of this Texas A&M team in the offseason. I mean, Colin Klein is going to be 150% dialed in trying to improve this, trying to improve Marcel Reed as a passer so that this passing game can take that step to the next level, which I think we all think is capable of doing. But, I mean, if Marcel Reed does take that next step, this offense can just be so good. It really can. I mean, you're going to have elite running backs. You're going to have great receivers thanks to the portal. You're going to have a really good offensive line. You're going to have a lot of tight ends. A lot of these positions are going to be part of our goals, we'll talk about here in a minute. But, I mean, so step one, goal one for this offense is Marcel Reed developing more as a passer, which I think he is more than capable of doing. Next goal I have here is establishing a tight end one. Last year, yes, Tre Johnson was the tight end one, but it still felt like there was a lot. I'd love to have a tight end that I mean, you were game planning. Opposing teams are game planning for this tight end, game in and game out. You know, like we saw a Gunnar Helm, and we've seen with Brock Bowers and just some elite tight ends over the last few years in college football. I think that Amari Niblack can be that player. I think that Micah Riley and Borkature and Theo are all going to have big roles for this offense. I mean, I feel pretty confident saying that. But at the same time, I really want to see this one of these players step up as the guy. If I had to guess right now, I would say it's going to be Amari Niblack, but I really like Micah Riley. I think his upside's there. I think he's a player that, I mean, we just don't know that much about because of the lack of snaps during his previous stop at Auburn, but I think he could be good. And I mean, just talking to him, we had him on the show a few weeks ago. He's motivated. I think he's a guy that could step into a serious role for this team. But I just think I want a tight end that opposing teams fear, and opposing teams are making their game plan and they're going, okay, we have to stop this guy. This tight end is a problem. He is really good. He helps out his quarterback. This is a guy that we need to find a way to slow down. So that to me is a big goal for this team in the offseason and Colin Klein. And I think they've got their guys now at tight end. I don't see him going to get any more. I mean, you've now brought in 3 tight ends in the portal. I think that's plenty. But like I said, I do think that you're going to see one of these players step up and be that guy for the Aggies. My next one here and last one in segment 1 is developing the defensive line. You know, you're losing the Shamars. You're losing Nick Scorton. You need, and you have a lot of young defensive linemen. Now you have a lot of older guys, and Searcy and Pimba, and Hayes and Oyinum. I mean, you've got some veteran players, but you've also got some guys that are still a little bit young or still might need a little bit more development. And we're not talking about Cassius Howell for a reason. We'll get to that in a minute. But I really want to see one of these defensive linemen develop and really take that step in the right direction. And I think that they're capable of doing that. So that is a big goal for me for this offseason for Texas A&M is finding a way. You know, you're losing a lot of your guys, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, who have been on your defensive line, staples for a few years. Nick Scorton was your one and done dominant player who's going to go get drafted in the first round of the NFL. I mean, there are a lot of things that need to happen with this defensive line. And I've talked about this. I've been pretty candid. I don't think that we're done when it comes to the defensive line. I think that you're going to see the staff go get some more players in the portal. Maybe not in this window. And once again, to reiterate, that is my favorite part about the way the portal works. Right now, you go try and get some players in the portal. And if you just swing and miss, if it doesn't work out, if you don't get everything you need, then in the next window, you go and you get some more players. That is what I like about this system. So they might be done in this window. Maybe not. I'm probably done in this window. Maybe not, but probably. And if that's the case, I think that you're going to see them go get a few more players in the portal at the defensive line position in the next window. If the players they brought in aren't good enough, or if there's not enough depth, there's going to be many reasons. So I think you're going to see that happen in this next portal window. The next goal for this offseason has to do with Rueben Owens and his development. I think that's going to be another big key for this football team. We'll talk about that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time, as y'all know, as you everydayers here at Locked On Aggies know, is my favorite place to buy tickets to anything, any event I'm going to. I mean, I've talked about it. I went to see Shane Gillis with my dad. We got our tickets on Game Time. I got my mom tickets to a concert for her and I. Got them on Game Time. Dad and I are going to a basketball game here in February. Got those tickets on Game Time. I absolutely love the Game Time app. It's easy to use. They have the best prices. I'll actually be in Nashville this weekend for a basketball game for work. Obviously I got buddies going down there with me. They got their tickets on Game Time. I got a credential, but love the Game Time app. It is the best app to purchase tickets to everything. Sporting event, concert, comedian, whatever you want to go see, Game Time has the tickets and they have the best prices. I promise you're going to want to go give them a look. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So my next goal for this offseason for the Aggies is the development of Rueben Owens. After his freshman year, he did a lot well, but there was so many clear, easy ways that he could continue to get better and better and better. And we expected that to happen. We were hearing good things. And then he goes down with the injury. We don't see a lot of Rueben Owens last year. We see him in the game against Texas, and then we see him in the bowl game against USC. That was it. That was really all that we saw last year at the end of the day, all we saw of Rueben Owens last year. And I think that now, the good thing to know now about Rueben Owens is I think that he's going to continue to develop. I don't think that he's done developing. I think that, that time off, it takes away valuable reps and game reps and practice snaps. And I think that Rueben Owens is going to take that next level step this year. And I still think that he's not going to get quite as many carries as Le'Veon Moss. He's not. That's just reality. He's not going to get as many carries as Le'Veon Moss. But at the same time, I think he's going to be more efficient with his carries. I think he's going to have a really, really good season for the Aggies as the backup running back. I think he's going to be RB2. But I've talked about it. I've said it on the show this week. I think he's too good to be considered an RB2. I like to call him the 1C, because he's probably not a 1B, because I think that you're going to see Moss get more of the carries, but call him a 1C. I think he's good enough to have earned that title rather than a running back 2. But I do think that he is he'd be a running back 1 at a lot of places, probably in the SEC. So I think that Rueben Owens is going to have a good year. He's got more developing to do, but I think that he's going to do it, and that's another priority for this offense this offseason. I've got offensive line needs to take another step. You're pretty much starting offensive line. It's going to all be returners unless you go get somebody in the portal, which I don't see that happening. So knowing that's the case, last season you had a good offensive line. Without question, without debate, you had a good offensive line. And it was exciting because we were expecting it to be okay. Maybe it's going to be okay. We weren't really sure. We needed to see it play out. It ends up being good. Now the offensive line needs to take that next step to elite. And I think another year in the program, another year of development, another year under Coach Klein, another year in the weight room, all of these things could add up to a much better season for this Texas A&M offensive line. And I just tell you this, we're going to talk about the receivers here in a second. And we've talked a lot about Rueben Owens. We've talked about Marcel Reed, talked about tight ends. All that's important. But I think if this offensive line can become elite, become one of the better units in college football, one of the better units in the SEC, this Texas A&M offense is going to be absolutely terrifying, top to bottom terrifying. That will make the difference. So, I mean, keep developing. Basantis and Zune keep getting himself better and better. I think Zune's going to work his way into the NFL draft pick. I mean, there's a lot of positives around this offensive line. I love Armaj Reed-Adams. He plays the game the right way. He's angry. He's a dog. He's ready to kill you out there. I love the way this offensive line plays. And I think that one more year together, that's the thing too. I mean, seriously, bringing back a starting offensive line, having a unit that's played a lot of snaps together, it helps. It matters. And this offensive line this year is going to have exactly that. I am really stoked to see this unit this year because I think they're going to take that next step. I do. And I think if they take that next step, it is going to be absolutely terrifying for opposing defenses. Next thing I got here is we need these wide receivers to end up being really good. And I know that that's not like a goal to work on. That's kind of more of a hope, but still, we brought in a lot of receivers in the portal last window and it didn't work out all that great. They were, Jabri Barber and Cyrus Allen, and they were okay. They were fine. They helped us a little bit, but they weren't like these elite dominant wide receivers that we were hoping they were going to be. And I think that KC Concepcion and Mario Craver and Jonah Wilson, I think that these guys can be really, really, really good for this offense. Now, Marcel Reed developing as a passer is going to play a role in that. They're going to need some help. They can't throw the ball to themselves. But I guess what I'm saying is we believe KC Concepcion. I don't see a world where KC Concepcion isn't good because once again, he did this in the ACC at NC State. He did this at a legit program. He wasn't doing this. Now, I mean, Cyrus Allen, comes from Louisiana Tech and Jabri Barber comes from Troy. It's not like they were coming from random, tiny, awful schools, but still, KC Concepcion proved it at a big-time school. Mario Craver had a freshman year in the SEC. So I think that these guys have proven that they can play football at this level, and that is going to be a big reason why I think this year's transfers at the wide receiver position are going to work out better than last year's did. That's just my opinion, but that needs to happen. That's a big goal this offseason. And the last thing I have here is Cassius Howell becoming the perfect replacement for Scorton and Stewart and Turner. If Cassius Howell can become this elite well, heck, I mean, I don't even want to say become because he is. I mean, last year, his pass rush grade, we talked about it. It was one of the best in the SEC among returning players besides Dylan Stewart from South Carolina. Cassius Howell was really good last year. He played almost 500 snaps and had the best defensive PFF grade. So it's not like he had the best PFF grade on 80 snaps. It was almost damn near 500 snaps. He is really, really, really good. And I think that you're going to see him take a step to becoming elite. I see a world where Cassius Howell turns himself into a first-round draft pick with his play this year. I mean, he's going to be the guy when it comes to pass rushing for the Aggies this year. So, I mean, I am fully bought in to see how good he's going to be. I just think that he is going to take the SEC by storm. I don't think enough people are talking about him. I don't think enough people are, sitting here and talking positively about who he is. I think that he can be a dominant force in this league, and I'm really, really excited to see that. Let me know in the YouTube comments, what are some other goals that y'all have for this team this offseason? How do you want this team to improve? What players do you want to see get better? Let me know in the YouTube comments how you want this Texas A&M football team to improve. What goals do they need to work on over the next few months before we get into next season? Let me know that in the YouTube comments. We're going to preview the Aggies matchup with the Longhorns on the hardwood, which is coming up tomorrow. We'll talk about that coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. The Aggies and Longhorns are getting ready for their second matchup of the season on the hardwood. I mean, I think the first game should be a blueprint of exactly what you want. I mean, it was a game where They had 5 offensive rebounds, a total of 31 rebounds. You out-rebounded them 41-31, and you dominated on the glass. Again, you out-rebounded them +6 on the offensive glass. You did everything there. You shot 32 free throws. You got to the line 24, 75%. If you get 32 this game, I'd love to see you make closer to 28, 30. But once again, that's not beside the point. And it was a game where you were atrocious from 3, going 2 of 19. 1 of 7 from Wade Taylor, 1 of 4 from Hefner, 0 of 3 from Carter. I mean, it was just a rough game from deep. And you still found a way to win this basketball game by 20 points. So a big goal here to win this ball game is going to be, once again, slowing down Tre Johnson. In this game, this was Johnson's, the true freshman phenom, his first game in SEC play. And Johnson went for 11 points, but it was on 2 of 13 shooting and 0 of 5 from 3. He loves the mid-range jumper, but at the end of the day, I mean, not letting Tre Johnson get to that is going to be key. I mean, not letting him get to that mid-range and have it, because it's a pretty shot when he gets and he pulls up from that mid-range jumper. Wade Taylor's got to play better basketball. I don't know another way to sit here and explain that. He has got to be better. On the season, Wade Taylor is now down to averaging 14.7 points per game. He's shooting 31% from 3, 36% from the field. I mean, that's just not going to get the job done. I mean, it's the field goal percentage is similar to what he's done in his career, but I mean, these numbers are similar to what he's done in his career, but he's just got to be better. He's got to be more efficient. I mean, he's just not efficient at times, and that frustrates the heck out of me. Basketball players that aren't efficient really frustrate me. Wade Taylor has got to be better from the field. And I know he's capable of it. We've seen him have games where he goes 11 for 14 and he goes 6 to 7 from 3. We've seen him do it. He's capable of doing it. I'm not asking him to go 80% from the field on 15 shots, but I mean, I'd love to see him closer to 50%. A few games. I mean, it seems like every game I've checked out these last 4 or 5 games that he played, he's 2 of 12, 2 of 13, 2 of 15. I mean, it's just, he's not getting a lot of shots to go. Wade Taylor, if this team's going to have a successful season, has to be more efficient from the field. So would love to see Wade Taylor have a good game here. We like I said, he struggled in the first matchup between these teams. So want to see Wade Taylor shoot the ball better from the field. Want Texas A&M to continue to dominate on the glass. That's a good way to win this ball game. If those things happen, Phelps has a good game. I'd love to see more minutes from Wilcher. I've talked about that. I think he's a great three-point shooter, and the more minutes you give him, I mean, he's just going to be better and better and better because he hasn't had a lot of time to kind of settle in. So I think that's the key there too. Win this ball game. You're in a great spot right now. You're playing good basketball. Make your free throws. Be efficient from the field. Take good shots. Pass the basketball. Keep playing your suffocating defense. Close out on shooters and rebound on both sides of the glass, and you'll win this basketball game, even on the road in a hectic environment against your number one rival. So I'm excited about this ball game. It's going to be a fun one. I know y'all are too. That's going to do it for this week here at Locked On Aggies. Thank y'all so much for being here every single day. I really, really, really do appreciate it. Hope everyone has a great rest of their Friday, a great weekend, and we will see y'all on Monday right here on Locked On Aggies.